The Odyssey. We are going to pick up the pace a little bit. Today we'll deal with the most famous part, but it's unjustly the most famous. Anyway, I'm going to deal with it in summary fashion. Books 9, 10, 11, and 12 form the Great Wanderings. This is the most famous part of the Odyssey, but for no very good reasons. Number 11 is of anthropological interest, all of it's of mythical interest, but nothing profound at all, really. His adventures. He has arrived at Scheria, and at the end of Book 8, Alcinous asks, "Who are you?" At the beginning of Book 9, one of my favorite moments, there's a kind of parallel with Book 22, the climax. The stage is set at the end of 21, 22, boom. Same here. I am Odysseus, son of Laertes. Maybe you've heard of me. I've been around Troy and fought in the war, blah, blah, blah. And then he starts to tell his story. One has to imagine these 4 books, during these 4 books, a crowd of, we don't know really, 100, 500 people sits absolutely hypnotized. Homer stops 2 times, 2 wonderful times during these 4 books, to remind us really where we are. We're at Scheria, and both times emphasize the silence in the room. An amazing experience, an amazing aesthetic, if not intellectual experience. For us, keeping our eye on Odysseus, the important thing is what an amazing speaker he is, and it is among his great traits, of which he has so many. Okay, now let's look at this a little more analytically from my point of view. If my nascent theory, N-A-S-C-E-N-T, being born, of alienation, reintegration has much meaning, we have to find it here. I have to find it here. And it's hard to find, I admit. But possible, in bits and pieces at least. So I'll be calling attention to that, because after the Great Wanderings, what he's telling about, by the way, just to be sure, are his travels during the first 2 to 3 years when he left Troy to return home. Then after 3 years, let's say, at the end of the Great Wanderings, he lands on Calypso's island, where he remains for 7 years, pretty much. So this will fill in the last information we need about Odysseus, his whereabouts. But if you have been following me, the beginning of this really is the alienation, the estrangement between Odysseus and Athena. And if Athena is, as she certainly is, his best qualities, perhaps his deepest qualities, intelligence, courage with endurance, cunning maybe, the ability to make plans, his speaking, and even his artistic traits, because each of these can be linked to Athena. Then we get the alienation to the landing on Calypso's island. But her anger is going to continue well past that, as much as 7 more years. Okay, what happened? They left Troy, each of these books, 9, 10, and 12, consists of 2 minor episodes and 1 major episode. This is the main way that will help anyone, me, remember all this material, and there's quite a lot. But to remember the structure is to be helped a lot. First stop, Sicones, sailing north. They raid the city, kill, loot, plunder, all that, get drunk. The men want to stay. Odysseus wants to leave. He fears trouble. They stay. The next morning, big neighbors come, an army, attack a terrible fight takes place. Odysseus and his men get away on the 12 ships, but each ship has lost 6 guys. Well, Odysseus, as they're sailing away, forces the best friends of each of those guys to call out 3 times farewell. This is kind of the best they can do in the sense of a funeral. But it's typical of Odysseus. I mean, why would he insist on that? Especially since the others really would have been okay without it. It's typical of him, his loyalty, his piety. Let's emphasize that. Okay. Where's the alienation here? None. Second adventure, Lotus Eaters. They sail, driven south by wind. We now leave the map. Can't follow it from here on, even though some people have tried. They land somewhere. Odysseus typically sends a herald and 2 men inland. Those 2 run into the Lotus Eaters, who are men who are addicted to some drug. They try the drug. They don't want to leave. Their herald runs back, tells Odysseus. Odysseus goes in there with a couple of men and forces them out of there onto the boat, saving their lives, really. Okay, sail on. Things are not going well, though. They sail all night, and during the night they land on an island, what turns out to be an island, in a perfect harbor. Here's the famous episode of the Cyclops, about which I know too much. I guess it's the best of all the incidents, along with the Circe, I guess. Okay. They are exhausted. They sleep. In the morning, they realize they're on a small island that's populated, so to speak, by wild goats. They kill the goats, have meat to eat. That's always good news for these Greeks. They feast all day. They have plenty of wine. And the next day, Odysseus says, okay, 20 of you guys are going to go to the shore with me, because up on the mountain, halfway up the mountain, there's a big cave. Fire's coming out of there. I want to find out what's going on. Now, this episode, if any of the episodes show weaknesses, follies even in Odysseus, this is the one. Emphasized at first are his inquisitiveness, curiosity, and his acquisitiveness. He wants to acquire gifts. He wants things. Not very nice, though not very reprehensible by Greek standards. In fact, Greeks would admire, to a degree, both of these qualities. And maybe the rest of us do too. But the episode shows worse. So let's follow it. 24 men on the ship. They go the short distance to the shore. Odysseus takes 12 with them. Always these geometrical proportions. Half of 24, 12, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. Homer is a geometric age in the visual arts. Homer belongs to the geometrical age in these superficial senses. Odysseus goes up the mountain with his 12, reaches the cave. No one's there. It's a big cave. And inside they find milks, cheeses, dairy products. Apparently the occupant is a vegetarian. Okay, they decide to wait. In comes a giant of a man, Cyclops. We're never explicitly told one eye, but it must be one eye he has. He lifts a boulder as large as this room, puts it to block the doorway there. No way out. He has brought his ewes and a ram into his cave with him. He's very fond of them. He speaks to them affectionately. He treats them very well. First impression, he's a vegetarian, and he's a very kind, nice man, especially to his animals. Milks the ewes. This is key to get the milk and all that. eats some cheese and yogurt. Then he has seen the men, of course. When he came in, they scattered, terrified. He's big. Who are you guys? Odysseus speaks. Important. We are headed home from the great episode of Troy, the great Trojan War. You must have heard of it. And under the great chief Agamemnon, I'd like a gift from you. Respect the gods. The gods dictate kind treatment of guests and all that. Cyclops, whose real name is Polyphemus, says, in the first place, I don't care about your silly little Trojan War. Second place, I don't care about your silly little gods either. We Cyclopes live here, separately by the way, no assemblies, no agriculture, no civilization. We live here and we don't care about the gods, and the gods don't disturb us. With this, he takes two of Odysseus' men, crushes their skulls, eats them. Ouch! What happened to vegetarian? Okay. So, Odysseus, oh my God, what's happening here? But they're stuck all night. Next morning, two more. But he takes the sheep out and the rams, replaces the boulder. They can't get out. Odysseus must think of a way out of this. And so he thinks. And here he is at his cunning best. At his cunning best. But let's remember, why are they in this situation in the first place? His own folly. His own folly. Let's call it that way. Okay, he gets an idea. He finds a large log telephone pole in the cave. Fire is in the cave, of course. So he sharpens that telephone pole to a very sharp point, puts it in the fire to make it hot, and when it cools off hard, it will harden apparently, that kind of wood anyway, covers it up and waits. Toward evening, back comes Cyclops with his animals into the cave, boulder closed. Eats his dinner, grabs two more men, that's 6, kills them, eats them. Odysseus says, wow, you're quite a guy. I have some wine here, would you like to taste it? Okay, I'll try. Very powerful wine, 200 proof, very powerful. The Greeks would dilute it by 1 to 20 with water. Not diluted. Cyclops tastes it. Boy, that's pretty good stuff. I think I'll make you the last one I eat when I finish. What's your name anyway? My name is Nobody. At this point, all we have here is a folk tale. I'll eat you last. Drinks a lot of the wine. Boom, down, out, unconscious. So powerful. And vomits, and Homer tells us about the flesh particles that spill from his mouth as he lies there unconscious. Now Odysseus goes to work. His plan is working. With his 3 bravest men, they grab that pole. Odysseus is going to stand at the end of it, and 1, 2, 3, into the eye of the Cyclops. And Odysseus is at the end twirling it to make sure, I assume, to get all the nerve ends or something. He will never see again. By the way, his father is Poseidon, and this is where the anger of Poseidon comes from. Okay, scream, roar, thrashes around, but the men, of course, have scattered, and now he can't see. He calls out. Other Cyclopes come running. What's wrong? What's wrong, Polyphemus? Nobody has blinded me. Oh, you drunken ass. And they leave. Folktale, crafty folktale hero here. So, the rest of the night lasts. In the morning, the sheep, the ewes are going to have to get out. They are bursting for their little ones out there, and Polyphemus will not deprive them. So he moves the boulder, sits at the doorway there with his hands out. Odysseus has foreseen this. he takes 3 of the sheep together, has some rope there, ties one of his men under the 3, so there are 6 of them. That's 3 times 6 is 18 of the sheep. And then there's the one big black ram. He himself holds on under that just by sheer strength, which he has plenty of. Out they go. Polyphemus only feels the top, doesn't think to feel below. They get out. His plan has worked. Then Odysseus quickly, silently unties the men. They steal some cheeses and yogurts and things, and down the hill they go. The 12 on board see that 6 are missing, but they get on the ship and they row backwards out. But when they've reached a certain point, Odysseus says, "Polyphemus, you fool, you thought you could get the better of me. I'm Odysseus, son of Laertes." Bad moment. Now, looked at seriously, and I'm trying to say that the Odyssey is a serious work, this is not serious. Not in a practical way. Of course, Poseidon will know who blinded him. He knows already. Unless you look at it from a moral point of view. From a moral point of view, of course Poseidon will know. That's not the point. The point is this moment of hubris, Hubris, wanton recklessness, especially a lack of piety for the gods. Yes, he is guilty of this. How serious is this? Well, to make my theory work, we have to make it pretty serious. This is pretty serious. This will incur the wrath of Poseidon for a long time, 10 years. Now, in a relatively short period of time, he has alienated Athena and Poseidon. That is serious. And even from the point of view which I think is in Homer, don't take the gods too seriously as external forces, internalize them. They represent forces in us. As such, this is consonant even with Indian philosophy at its most profound, it seems, in the Upanishads and Shankara, 9th century, 9th century. That is, the spirit of the universe is Brahman. At the deepest depth of a human being, far below personality and all that which are nonsense, lies Atman. Atman and Brahman are one. That's what I mean by internalizing this. And the great mystical moment for these Indians is to discover, experience that oneness. Okay, let's apply this here. No such depth, I think no such depth, but some depth. Odysseus now has been guilty in 2 glaring moments of hubris, of reckless disregard for decency and for the gods, which are the same thing. The same thing. Okay, here we go. Cyclops grabs a huge boulder, throws it blindly out into the sea. It lands behind the boat, creating a wave, washing the boat back onto shore. Out a second time. Shh, shut up, you fool. Does it again. Taunts again. A second rock, behind, ashore. Oh, third time, silence. They go, and they reach the island. So 6 guys are dead. The others are alive, are dead because of the folly of Odysseus. The others are alive, and he too is alive because of his cunning and his intelligence. But he almost got them killed, the remainder with himself killed, a final time. So you see what I mean. The episode is famous, but looked at seriously, and one has to look at it seriously, in Homer. This is a glaring example of the alienation of Odysseus from what's best in himself, what's deepest in himself, from God, if you like. It works. The trouble is I have to make this one episode work across the board. That's a little hard. But I think the case can be made in this case. Okay. So now they're really depressed. At the end of book 9, they sail. Book 10, minor episode. The island of Aeolus. Aeolus is mortal, but he controls the winds. He has 7 daughters and 7 sons who are married to each other, just like the gods were earlier. They spend every day partying, it seems. Odysseus lands there and he tells them his amazing stories. Aeolus, in gratitude, gives him a bag by which he can control the winds. Thus he can get home right away. They set sail. For 3 days and 3 nights, Odysseus stays awake, controlling the winds, and the 12 ships head straight toward Ithaca. They even see Ithaca in the distance, the smoke rising. Odysseus on that 4th day is exhausted, sleeps. The men get together and say, that Odysseus, he brings home prizes and goodies in that bag. We have nothing. Let's see what's in that bag. Blown back to Aeolus's island. They see Aeolus. Aeolus says, go away, the gods must hate you. Important for me. The gods must be angry at you. There must be a curse on you. Woo, here we are. Okay, we're making a case. Go away. So they sail. 2nd episode, the Lystragones. The story is so strange and bizarre I won't tell it, but the outcome is that when they leave there are no longer 12 ships, there's 1 ship. 11 ships have been lost. It's a minor episode, but the consequences are huge. They sail on, now very dispirited. Land apparently on an island. Odysseus goes inland, mounts a hill, sees that it's inhabited. There's a house and smoke rising. Goes back to the boat. Tells them about it. They are heartbroken. They don't want any more adventures. Take that as an indication of where I am too. I always say that they have to stop there and get provisions, but really Homer doesn't say that, and it's not true. Okay, my case is building, even as we speak here, because they didn't have to go to see Circe. They almost lost everybody, or half the men could have lost everybody. The reason not is interesting. You'll see it. That's interesting. Okay. Odysseus divides the men into 2. 22, 22, he's 1. That means there are 45 at this point. Plus 6 in the last episode, assuming from the same. Plus 6 at the Sicones, 12. 57. A good case can be made for 57, at least on Odysseus's boat, around that number. So I think 55 to 60 on each boat. Okay, they flip a coin basically, the other guys lose. Their job is to go to this house and find out what's there. Again, do they have to go? No. This is Odysseus's folly a little bit. Okay. They find the house, they approach it, but the one leader hangs back, suspicious. The other guys, 21 guys, knock on the door. A beautiful woman opens the door. They enter. A few minutes later, our guy watching, out come 21 pigs. 21 pigs. And the woman drives them into a pen outside. Oh my God, what happened to my friends? Oh my God. He is terribly upset. Runs back, tells Odysseus, sobbing, take me back there, show me, I'm going to do something about this. No, no, don't make me take you back there. He doesn't make him. So I skipped one episode, but it's minor. The stag, at the end of that first outing, scouting expedition, the gods send him a huge stag right across his path. He kills it, carries it back, must be 300 pounds. They feast that night. They feast, they have wine, happy. The next morning Odysseus tells them they've got to explore. Okay, now Odysseus is going back there to try to rescue his men. On his way through the woods, who meets him? Hermes. Now this is hard for my case. I thought he was alienated from the gods. Not from Hermes, apparently. This is hard to make fit. But Hermes, charming, wonderful Hermes, always says, look, you've got trouble. Here's some moly, M-O-L-Y, but the gods call it moly. Eat this, it's a root. It will create an immunity to Circe, because Circe is a sorceress, has magical powers. You will arrive there, she will invite you in, have a seat, here's a drink. They drank it, they drank this magic potion. Then she tapped them with the magic wand, they changed to pigs. Moly will prevent this. You can go ahead and drink, then she will tap you, but nothing will happen. She will be terrified. You can pretend to attack her. Wait a minute, she's magic. What does she have to fear from Odysseus? Nothing. But then she will say, let's go to bed. Do that if you want. Then you can get your men back. Strange, bizarre. Okay, all this happens. He goes to bed. Then she wants him to feast, no tricks, and he's too depressed. He says, no, I'm sorry, I can't do this while my men are out there, pigs. Okay, I'll change them. And invite the others too. So the whole group of 45 stay a year. At the end of the year, he's been sleeping with Circe during this year. Terrible, not from the Greek point of view, but I don't know. It's hard to make sense of that one. At the end of the year, the men say, let's go home. So it's clear that Odysseus was having a pretty good time. The men were having a not bad time, for a while anyway. Okay, he tells Circe. Circe says, first, you're going to have to go to the land of the dead. Oh my God. Yep, you have to go there and talk with Tiresias, the blind prophet. He will tell you what you have to know. All this kind of looks like penance, P-E-N-A-N-C-E. Penance for sins, that is, you must go through this purging, this purgation. I'm sure others have thought of this. By going to the land of the dead before you can be right-wised in Christian, in theologian language for Paul, before we can be right-wised with God. Before he can be right-wised with God, he's got to do this penance. I think that's acceptable. In terms of the story, it's acceptable. Anyway, she tells him what he has to do. He sails to the end of the world, and this is the most famous and interesting, in a very superficial way, part of the Odyssey, Book 11. Students have to know Book 11, but frankly, it's not great. It's nothing compared with 18 to 22. Superficial nonsense, as are the Great Wanderings, frankly. Okay. The world is a disk, much like this table. The river ocean sails around the edge, so the earth is flat. He's got to sail to the edge of the world and find a tree. What? That's a vast, vast area to find a tree. So all this has to be taken kind of symbolically, allegorically. Find the tree, dig a deep hole, pour milk and wine and honey and barley and maybe something else in there. The spirits of the dead will come there and want to drink. Because they are flitting around, they can't talk or think, except Tiresias, without drinking something like this. Don't let them until you talk to Tiresias. Now wait a minute. They are insubstantial. How can he stop them? You're supposed to sit there with his sword drawn and intimidate these creatures who can't think and reason, certainly have nothing to fear from his little sword. The whole thing is nonsense. Okay. So he goes there. before they leave early in the morning, Elpenor is the most famous of the common men of the Odyssey, so I must tell you the story. Elpenor is simply an oarsman, a common man. Elpenor, drunk the night before, slept on the roof, and when Odysseus wakes the men up to tell them they've got to set sail, he forgets that he was on the roof, falls, breaks his neck, dead. When they leave, perhaps they don't even notice. When they arrive at the land of the dead, or dig the hole and all that, the first soul to arrive is Elpenor. Now, Elpenor doesn't have to drink. He hasn't crossed officially into the land of the dead yet, and his message to Odysseus is, please, when you leave here, go back to Circe's island to bury me. Give me decent burial, and put my oar in my grave mound. Notice, by the way, Iliad, cremation, burn the dead. Odyssey, bury the dead. Big difference, but I think okay. This Elpenor episode is really the nicest, one of the nicest of them all. The nicest with Mom. 11 has some great literary moments, but nothing profound. Okay, so Odysseus, of course, says, I'll do it. The next to arrive at the hole is Mom, Anticlea. But he keeps, although he is shocked and hurt, he keeps her away because he's got to talk to Tiresias. Tiresias arrives. Tiresias doesn't even have to drink this stuff. He is lucid without it, but he drinks it anyway. He tells Odysseus that he and his men must avoid the cattle of Helios, Book 12. If they can avoid that, they can get home. But he implies really that Odysseus will go home alone. When he arrives home, he will wipe out the suitors. We've known this from Book 1. He doesn't say that explicitly, but you'll take care of business, let's say. Then you must make a kind of pilgrimage. Walk inland. Now, this inland, where? Ithaca? No, not Ithaca, on the mainland. Walk inland carrying an oar. When you come to a place where the people say, what kind of winnowing fan is that, stranger? Winnowing fan, to scatter the grain. That is, the real point is they will not recognize that this is an oar. That means they know nothing about the sea. That means they know nothing about Poseidon. Plant the oar in the ground and do hecatombs, sacrificing lots of animals, to Poseidon. This will right-wise you with Poseidon. Then, and for his purposes, this will proselytize, convert new worshippers for Poseidon. Very interesting, must admit. But we're talking about his reconciliation with Poseidon, which can only really take place after he gets home. Then go home and do hecatombs for all the gods, and you will be right-wised with all the gods too. Well, apparently Hermes likes him even in Book 10, but okay. So then he talks with Mom, very touching, one of the most moving moments, I must admit. Why did she die? How did you die, Mom? I died, this is important, out of longing for you and your gentle ways. Wow. If Mom says that, it's true. Because we always believe those people who know him best. He is gentle, and he's gentle to everyone who's around him, really, unless he just can't be as a soldier and all that. But when we get back to Ithaca, we'll see. We learned it even in Book 2, before the assembly. Everyone has fond memories of Odysseus. What a gentle but strong leader, king he was to them. He's our man. The Odyssey is Odysseus, remember. Okay. They try famously to hug 3 times. Mom, stand still. I'm insubstantial, I can't. Well, excuse me, but she drank this stuff. Where did that go? What happened to that when these guys drink this stuff? Is it in their digestive tract, or does it just flow through the air, or too many absurdities? But it's all folktale, really. It's all folktale. Then he talks with the 12 famous princesses. They hear stories. He's fascinated. Then apparently the scene shifts because he's no longer sitting by the hole. Apparently he wanders because first he sees Tantalus, story you know. Then he sees Sisyphus, famous thief, rolls a big boulder to the top of a hill. Hill? What's a hill? I thought we were sitting by a hole. Stone rolls back down, roll it back up again, stone rolls back down. Then Tityos, who tried to rape Hera, bad move, ooh. His gall is being plucked by an eagle every day, his liver, let's say, but it grows back. Then he's wandering, clearly we're not by a hole, what happened? And who does he run into? Before he arrives, there are Agamemnon and Achilles. Great moment, I must admit. They are chatting amicably about the good old days in Troy. Achilles, you were amazing, and your funeral was amazing. You were a prince, and even now you're amazing. Agamemnon, Lord of men, what a great king you were. You led us. Thank you. Patroclus is there too, and Aias. Great moments, I must admit. Okay, 11 is great, but not on a level of thought. Odysseus approaches them. Oh my God, what a guy! He was great and brilliant at Troy, and now no one else has done this, he comes while he's still immortal to Hades' halls. My God, what a guy! How did you do this? Admiration. Odysseus full of admiration for them. Lord Agamemnon, how did you die? My God, he's so devoted to him. And we hear the story again about Clytemnestra. That makes 3 times. Lord Achilles, great Achilles, you were the Lord of men in life, and you seem like the Lord of the dead. And Achilles says the famous line that everybody seems to have heard. Odysseus, I would rather be the servant of a landless servant and plow land and live in absolute poverty and rags than be Lord of the dead. Whoa! This is usually taken, by the way, whenever anybody generalizes about the Greeks, including Cook, you know that he's being a fool, including Cook. What do we mean by the Greeks? We mean at least 1,000 years of civilization, 1,000 years in diverse locations, scattered and isolated most of the time. That's nonsense. It's impossible to generalize about the Greeks. Any generalization is stupidity, or a moment of carelessness and inattention, as Hume calls it, my favorite expression. Not thinking, and that includes anything I say too. It's absurd. Anyway, this utterance of Achilles is taken to be the Greek love of life, and valuing of life over anything that might happen to us after death. Nonsense. Some Greeks felt that some of the time. Just completing that thought. When people generalize about the Greeks, of course they mean the Athenians in the 5th century BCE. And even that's impossible to generalize about. It's impossible to generalize about any of them. They have no value. Do Sophocles and Euripides agree about anything? Do they agree with Socrates about anything? Not much, except very gross cliches. Okay. So, moving on, then the last absurdity of Book 11 comes when he sees Heracles in the distance. Heracles is hunting. Hunting? We were sitting by a hole, remember? Hunting. Odysseus knows him because Odysseus is a great archer, remember? Yo, Heracles, what's up? And Heracles says, Yo, Odysseus, I'm not real, I'm just a phantom of Heracles here. Real Heracles is up on Mount Olympus sipping ambrosia and nectar with the gods. What? What is this nonsense? End of Book 11, Odysseus gets a little nervous, takes off. Book 12, returns to Circe's island, of course, buries Elpenor, of course, the wonderful common man, who was so proud of his ability as an oarsman. That's what he did, and that's what he was good at, and it was important to him. And most important, Odysseus respected it. Okay, then up all night with Circe, and Circe basically tells him what he can expect in the rest of Book 12. 2 minor episodes and 1 major episode, and these are very famous. First, sirens. But there are a lot of misunderstandings here. The sirens are not physically beautiful, because you will sail by in your boat. You won't be able to see them. The beauty of their song is what's important. And not just the beauty of their song, but the knowledge that they sing in the song. This will lure people to the shore, where they will die because the shore is so messy. If you want to hear it, though, you inquisitive man, put wax in the ears of all the other men on your boat. Have them tie you to the mast, tight. And as the boat sails by, you will struggle and try to get free. Tell them to put more ropes on you. And you will listen to the song. At the end, you'll be exhausted. When they sail past the song, the men can untie you, take the wax out of their ears. That's just what happens. The song is beautiful and wonderful, and Odysseus has heard it. Second, they come to the wandering rocks. Avoid those wandering rocks. Dangerous. Sail to the other side. But to the other side you'll have another choice. Scylla and Charybdis. Charybdis is a vast whirlpool which will swallow the whole boat. If you go that way, all of you will die. No, you must go by the way of Scylla. But Scylla is a monster with 6 heads who lives in a cave halfway up a cliff. You have to sail under that cliff. She has to come out, she's immortal, and she will snatch 6 of your men. Don't try to resist, she's immortal. If you resist, maybe she'll take 6 more. Odysseus, when he gets there, he cannot just sit there and watch these 6 men die. So he puts his armor on, stands there with his shield, warrior that he is. The punishment, she takes his 6 best men. And Odysseus says memorably that of all the things that he saw and had seen, that was the most terrible moment. When those 6 men screamed, begging him to intervene and save them, as she took them up to her cave to eat them. Terrible moment. He sails on. The major event is brief. It's long, but I'll tell it briefly. They pass an island. This is the big one, though. The island sacred to Helios, and the cattle are sacred to Helios. Don't touch those cattle. The wind stops blowing. He makes the men promise not to touch the cattle. They land. Days, weeks pass. No wind, they can't sail, and no meat. Finally, this is important, Odysseus goes up on the hill to pray. To pray. What happens to my theory of alienation? We haven't seen him pray much either, that's true. But he goes up to pray. But this is a desperate man in a desperate situation. So maybe that's my way out of that one. Our prayers in desperation, what are they worth? I wonder. I think not much. Sometime I'll discuss with you what prayer is worth, in my opinion. But anyway, to pray, and he sleeps. When he wakes up, he smells cooking meat. The men, it's too much. The men had said, well, which are we going to die of starvation? Or are we going to die by the gods? Anger. Let's kill the cattle, have some beef. They eat, they feast, he apparently doesn't. Next day, wind, out, set sail. Zeus, favored to Helios, zaps the ship. Down it goes, everyone dead except Odysseus. Paddles away. Here we go. He comes to Charybdis. Uh-oh, absurdity. there's a fig tree that is hanging over this whirlpool. He grabs it. Down goes his log. He hangs there for 24 hours? What? Even that's absurd. I mean, athletic man that he is, at least he would hop up there athletically and sit. But he hangs there for 24 hours. 24 hours later, she, Charybdis, spews forth the log again. He lowers himself onto the log, paddles away. 8 days he paddles. Imagine, no water, no food, total exhaustion. He's almost dead. On the 9th day, he lands on Ogygia, Calypso's island. She saves his life, nurses him back to health, and he spends the next 7 years there. Now we are caught up. It's the end of the wanderings. He has entertained the Scherians all night. An amazing set of tales. He's exhausted, and it's dawn. End of book. Okay, book 12. He's exhausted. By the way, twice already they've given him gifts. As they take him down to the boat, put the gifts on board. Arete, by the way, has taught him to tie a special knot she learned from Athena. What? By the way, earlier, before, in book 8, we had a farewell with Nausicaa too. The princess, wonderful. Okay, on board, farewell. The boat takes off. Odysseus, exhausted, sleeps. He sleeps during the entire journey. The boat darts across the ocean. They land on Ithaca. He's home, he's home, he's home. They unload the gifts. What happened to the special knot? How did they untie the special knot? What is this absurdity? Okay, that was just a final tribute to Arete, just as we had the final tribute to Nausicaa earlier, book 8. Okay, when he wakes up, he doesn't recognize the place. Athena has disguised it a little bit. And his first thought is, where are my goodies? Where are my gifts? Those swine. Where am I? Where did they dump me? Along comes a girl, 12 years old, Athena. He doesn't know at first. Where am I? This is Ithaca, fool. He's so happy. Kisses the ground. Now, what dominates the second half of the Odyssey, because here we are, is reunions. Whenever I give an exam on the Odyssey, there are 2 questions, and that's all. 1, discuss Odysseus the man. 2, discuss the reunions. They're that important. Not as important as the first, but huge. The person who can discuss these 2, of course, knows the Odyssey. The person who cannot, does not. It's that simple. Okay. So, he has a reunion, so to speak, with Ithaca. Earlier, he had had reunions with his men at Circe's Island when he gets them changed back. That was kind of nice, too. Okay. Then, gradually, Athena shows him where the goodies are. They put them in a cave, special cave. And then they sit down to plan what they're going to do. Because the suitors, Athena wants them dead. But let's always remember, with Homer, I admit, not all the time, but a lot of the time in the Odyssey, never in the Iliad, a lot of time in the Odyssey, the gods are at once external gods and qualities of man. Qualities of man. And Athena, the qualities are the best qualities in Odysseus. And yes, he will punish them. He becomes kind of the will of God. He's the will of Athena, which is the will of God. Do they deserve punishment? Yes. Will they be punished? Yes. How long have we known this? From the very beginning of Book 1. This has never been in doubt. That's what the Odyssey is about. The reintegration of this man's personality. His rediscovery of the best qualities in him. Well, okay. So, a delicious moment as the goddess and the hero sit at the foot of an olive tree, of course, my God, for God's sake, and plot. There are 2 things she says. First, I'm going to change you into an elderly beggar. because you can't let people recognize you. And you're going to go to the palace and find out what's what. But before you do that, number 2, you're going to go to Eumaeus's house. Eumaeus is the swineherd, slave of the family, but friend of the family too. Another kind of common man, although Homer tells us some nonsense story about how he was a prince on a little island. He was a prince of Bongdokdong, so I like to say, and he was kidnapped. I wish Homer wouldn't do that, because so many of the best characters are common. Eumaeus should be common, and Eurycleia should be common too. But Homer has concessions to make to his aristocratic listeners. But Homer has changed a lot. His society must have changed a lot, must have evolved. And in the direction, I would say, of democracy. Okay, so Book 13. Oh, at the end of Book 12, I've forgotten this twice in telling the Odyssey recently. The ship that had brought Odysseus home to Ithaca returns to Scheria. The whole population is always out there welcoming the ships back. They live by ships, after all. Poseidon is angry. Poseidon goes to Zeus and says, Zeus, I have always been the special protector of these Scherians, Phaeacians, but they are too ready to help people. They are too hospitable. I want to punish them. I want to take their island, basically he says, zap it, and kill them all. Zeus says, well, Earthshaker, that's his epithet, well, Earthshaker, do whatever you want. But if I were you, I would teach them a lesson, because they're pretty good folk. Hit that boat, or I'll hit that boat with my lightning. We'll change it to a big rock, which will stand in that harbor as a timeless reminder to these people to watch their steps a little bit. Okay, Zeus, you're the man. Do it. Boom! As the ship comes into the harbor, boom! Everybody dead. Changed to a big, gigantic rock. The people, everyone watching, saying, oh my God, I knew this would happen. And Alcinous says, I heard long ago that we would help one person and it would be a disaster for us. Quick, let's perform hecatombs to Poseidon and try to appease him, try to placate him. Glad I remembered that. That's at the end of 13. 14, 15, 16. Odysseus is with Eumaeus. Lots of nice things. End of 15. Athena goes to Sparta because we've got to get Telemachus back. Remember? We left him there in Book 4. He's got to get back to Ithaca, meet Dad, and help Dad. This is important to the whole plot. So she wakes him up. We have the farewell, which has some nice touching moments. The farewell to Menelaus and Helen, in which once again Menelaus seems to be a pompous ass, and Helen full of deep humanity, grace, and intelligence. You can see where Homer stands in these matters. So intelligent. I mean, Homer is so intelligent. There's almost no bottom to it, I think. Anyway, so farewell. They ride across the plain. They land at Pylos. Telemachus says, "Oh, Pisistratus, my friend, we are buddies. Don't make me meet your father Nestor. He will talk me to death. He's a wonderful man, but he will want to give me hospitality. Let me avoid this. Poor Pisistratus in a bad position. Nice touch. He's just a lad. Okay, my father's going to be angry with me. So you hurry. I'll drop you off here at the boat. You hurry. I will hurry to find Dad. You just make sure that you take off before I get back." Okay. Just as they're taking off on the boat, a fugitive, a suppliant, who has murdered a man, the relatives, of course, are on his trail. He is also, though, a seer, a prophet, and his moment will be very important in Book 20. Theoclymenus is his name. Approaches Telemachus as a suppliant. "I'm your suppliant. Help me." "Okay, on board, and they sail off. Book 16 is important to me, and I will finish that in the couple of minutes we have. Okay. Telemachus arrives at Ithaca, obviously avoiding the ambush of those bad guys who wanted to kill him, Antinous et al., and goes first to Eumaeus. Athena at work. The boat is sent to the harbor, and when it gets there, they will of course tell Penelope that Telemachus, whom I will call T from now on, is okay. Telemachus T goes up to Eumaeus' hut. There, Odysseus has been entertaining Eumaeus with lying stories, many of them Odysseus stories, charming, interesting, never heard before. T arrives. Odysseus, the beggar, stands up. Don't worry, old man, have a seat, you're welcome to stay here, and so forth. In my remaining moment. During this, Eumaeus is sent to give the message that to Penelope that T is okay. This sets the stage for T and O alone, father-son reunion. Very moving, but two important things. One, Homer never lets these moments be totally moving. I've told you this of the Iliad too. It's even more true of the Odyssey. He always tells us something that disturbs us. More important, they talk, father and son. We're going to kill those suitors. We and what army? Don't worry, Athena is with us. That's very nice. The gods live up on that hill somewhere, but they don't have much to do with us. And Odysseus says, and this is fundamental to my interpretation, if Athena is with me, I will fight against an army. The man is a mystic at this point. He is beyond faith. And this is an important message for us who are interested in religion. It's only when faith becomes more like knowledge that faith is really faith. Until then, it's, Lord, I believe, help thou my unbelief. It's our struggling humanity pretending to believe that we believe, struggling to believe what I'm afraid is unbelievable anyway. It's only when it reaches this point, superhuman, I admit, rare among us human beings, and this raises the big questions, I know. For Odysseus, he doesn't believe in Athena. He knows Athena is more real than Telemachus. Well, of course, we would all ideally be there in the best of all possible worlds or something like that. But we have to discuss the consequences of this. And in my own view, it makes most religion practiced just wishful thinking, a struggle to believe what basically is unbelievable. But for Odysseus and people like him, the saints, if you like, whose reality I believe in, I guess, faith and knowledge are the same thing. They're not different, they're the same. For the rest of us, they're different. They're distinctly different. And in fact, there is no knowledge. I'll say the second thing, my last comment. The only form of human knowledge that exists is the knowledge that Odysseus has right there. And this is Homer. Appreciate how far we are from the Iliad here. From the silly creatures, the silly divinities who populate the Iliad. How silly they are compared with this moment. It changes everything. If it were an isolated moment, that would be too bad. But it's not isolated. It will be sustained from here on. That's why the Odyssey is a great, great work of art. A great poem, profound. The equal to the Iliad, and frankly in some ways superior. But a very different man wrote it, composed it, from the men who composed the Iliad. It seems to me a difference of about 20 years. But when Odysseus says this, we are in a different universe. We are in the company of a great thinker at an early point in history, long before the Buddha and the great figures of the 6th century BC. We're, after all, in the 8th century BC with Homer. A religious, he has become, I think, in some ways, a religious genius on a very high plane.